So I would just encourage everyone, the goal is not to take money out of our students' hands and out of their needs. It's to take it out of the bureaucracy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Education Roundtable, where we discuss all things education with leaders in our community. Today, I am joined by Michele Morrow. Michele is the Executive Director of the National Alliance for Education Reform, and last fall was the Republican candidate for the North Carolina Superintendent of Public Instruction. Michele, thank you so much for joining us, and how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great and so glad to be with you.
Well, I have been looking forward to this conversation. There is so much happening right now in the world of education that I want to dive into. But first, tell us a little bit more about your new organization and what some of its objectives are.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So, as you stated, I had just run a campaign to be the next superintendent of public instruction. And as I traversed the state, I recognized that there is a great need to redeem the education system, the public school system in North Carolina. And so the National Alliance for Education Reform is a recognition that across the country, our children are not getting the quality education that they need and that we can provide them. And so this was a way to fulfill the campaign promises that I had made and to continue to push for safety in schools and academic excellence and career preparedness and school choice at every level. So that's really why we started it.
Yeah, and of course, this is also a nationally focused group as well, on top of some of the work that you're going to be doing in North Carolina. So how do you view the state of K through 12 right now nationwide, and what are some of the most urgent issues you think we need to address?
Well, the urgent issues we have, as I stated, are safety. We have a severe teacher crisis, and that's not just in the bodies, it's also in the training that our teachers, quite honestly, are not receiving in our colleges and universities in order to be able to handle their classrooms, as well as get our children, before they leave fifth grade, to be really proficient in reading and math, specifically, and writing. And that is across the board. Now, we are at a really great point where I think we have some incredible opportunities to really transform the government schools that we have. And that's because President Trump is in at the White House and they're doing everything they can to bring back pro-America and pro-family values and focus on meritocracy and academic integrity rather than political and social agendas. And really that is what we need to do. We have our children for such a short time, really 13 years, if you look at it from K through 12, to get them prepared to be critical thinkers, to be leaders, to be able to handle adult life, and to be able to enter into the workforce and to pursue careers that they're going to enjoy. And so I think people across the state, across the nation, recognize the problem that we're having, that our children are just not getting the education that potentially we got 20 and 30 years ago coming out of our government schools. And so to that end, I think everybody is looking for solutions. They're looking for leadership. They're looking for a return to what worked for those of us that are, over 40, and we are productive members of society. And so while I think that we are in dire straits in terms of pushing our children along and allowing them to graduate without the competency that is required to be independent as an adult and to be able to enter into the workforce in the capacity that we need them to do so. I think that we are at a point that this is a very uniting issue. Mm-hmm. And if we will come forth with solutions, with ideas, and with a positive outlook of where we're headed, I think it's going to be very uniting across races and genders and politics and even across states. So I'm excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, as it should, and we are too. So let's talk about the story that is on everyone's minds right now, the U.S. Department of Education. So actually this week we have some big news. Linda McMahon was recently confirmed as the Education Secretary to lead the department. And she put out a pretty remarkable statement on Monday talking about the department's final mission. So I read it this morning, and she lays out her vision for education in America and, of course, the department's role. And while she doesn't say it explicitly, in some ways she's really signaling an end to the department, or at least an end to the department as we know it, and moving control back to the state. So I wanted to ask, have you seen this statement, and what is your reaction to her vision for the department and her vision for education in America?
Yes, I did. I just read the statement actually yesterday, and I agree. I agree that we've got to focus on preparing the next generation. And really, I am in favor of completely streamlining that department. If President Trump thinks that it needs to be gone completely, I do have some other ideas for where I think when it was started, actually, the Office of Education was started back in the 1800s after the Civil War. And that was really to be more of a place where data and resources for the states. And I think that it could return to that because I do think that it would be wonderful for us to have the same quality of education, regardless of what state you live in. And I think there are some states, there are some districts that are doing well and that are really making strides in academic success for our students. And so I think for us to be able to share those across the country would be really great. But the bloat that has happened right now and the way that the U.S. Department of Education has become really just a political pack and has been pushing social ideologies and issues that are not helping to get great teachers, to train great teachers, to retain great teachers, and to ultimately prepare our children in the way that they should be prepared. And to give our constitutional here in North Carolina, the Constitution is very clear that it is our job to maintain that we have a sound basic education, moral education for every student. So I agree that school choice needs to be at the top of the list, but when we increase the competency and the excellence of our government schools, that's when we're going to raise the bar across all types of education, whether it's homeschooling, private schools, or charter schools. That is the way that the free market works. That's the way that capitalism works best, right? Healthy competition creates the best product at the best price. And that's what we need to look at. We need to look at, and I've actually spoken with somebody in Linda's administration last week and was talking, they said, what do you think needs to be happening? And I said, one of the things that I think we need to talk about, and we need to just drive this narrative home. Every decision we make, whether it's financial, whether it's in trainings, whether it's in curriculum, whether it's in, hiring practices, discipline policies, everything has to be focused on the student and student excellence and student success and student preparedness. I think that we have gotten away from that, and it's become much more of, as I said, ideologies, social and political agendas. It's become all about the teachers. And while we need to create an excellent environment and prepare them, we need to see that the end goal really is we need to prepare the next generation of students, right? And so I think if we will start that narrative and we will have positive movement forward in ways that we're going to solve the literacy crisis as well as the safety crisis and the teacher crisis, if we would focus our monies on the students and the students' needs, we will not be having to beg for more money from the American people every single year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel encouraged. I mean, we, at Callan work closely with school board members. We drive home the same message that you did, which is the purpose of education is to improve student outcomes and to prepare students for life after school, whether that's college, whether that's career, whether that's a tech school, anything that can help them prosper in life, make a good living, and ultimately find meaning. And that's what education should be all about. And I do think there has been a shift. Number one, a bigger focus on the issues that we're having in education. And number two, a healthy dialogue about what some of those issues are and how we can find solutions to address them. So I wanted to ask you about this sort of in the bigger picture of the discussion about the department. I mean, what are some of the key misconceptions that you see about the department? When you hear the discussions about abolishing the department or streamlining it, people sort of have this idea of what the department does, but in practice, it serves a completely different functions in some ways. So can you speak to that a little bit about what it does and does not do?
Absolutely. So the department is really just supposed to be giving federal money back to the districts in order to, as you say, to ensure that every student is getting that quality education and preparedness for life after school. What has been the big talk right now that we've heard is that our children are no longer going to have school lunches, kids are going to go hungry, and specifically our special needs students, those that have IEPs and that end up, falling under the Disabilities Act, are not going to get their services, that the money is going to be stripped from them. Title IX schools. I mean, people that are here in North Carolina have heard, for decades, literally, about Leandro and Title IX schools. And really, none of this could be farther from the truth because there are so many other entities, whether it's DHHS, whether it's the USDA, whether it's the FDA, whatever it might be, there's so many other entities that are also helping to ensure that every student is getting a quality education and that they're safe in their environment. But I would put this to people. Like right now, when we look at what's been happening within our special needs community, within those exceptional learners, we have had more discipline issues in terms of they have been harmed. Like we're hearing that just in North Carolina. They have not been getting the services that they deserve. So it's not a matter of just dumping more money into a pile. I said when I was on the campaign trail, we could put $1 million in every first grade classroom. And it will not teach them how to read or write or do math. It won't teach them how to get along with one another. It's not about how much we spend. It's about prioritizing our spending. And so people need to understand that very often there is this fear mongering of, oh, they're going to take away your funding and that means nobody's going to get anything. It's absolutely not true. And I have to say, while I was campaigning and even last week, we had a meeting. We've actually spoken with somebody at Robert Kennedy's in his office of MAHA about how can we make a farm to cafeteria initiative a reality across the country. Like when we're looking at food and we're looking at food insecurity, the problem is not that there is no food. The problem is that our children are not eating healthy. They are not learning good habits of health for themselves to take into adulthood. They are not getting the nutritional need that they have. And that's why we have increase in, children's ability to focus and their ability, so many kids with learning differences and so many kids with behavioral problems. We really need to look at that. And so there is a way that we don't just dump more money in, but we say, how can we benefit the farmers? And how can we benefit our children that we're not just feeding them, but we're also teaching them about how to take care of themselves? Because that's a portion of education, right? A portion of education is how are you going to comport your body as you move into adulthood to ensure that you are healthy, your health and your wellness and whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's intellectual is at its top peak performance. So I would just encourage everyone, the goal is not to take money out of our students' hands and out of their needs. It's to take it out of the bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. It's to take it out of the hundreds of people that are in central offices. I mean, the number of lawyers that we have, full-time lawyers on every school board, it's getting rid of the 4,100 people at the U.S. Department of Education and paring that down to 200, let's say. It's not spending $238 billion on education and have almost 2/3 of our students not reading or doing math at grade level. That is the reality. The money needs to come out of those agendas that aren't helping our students, and it needs to be reallocated to the things like healthy lunches and tutoring and, quality curriculum.
Yeah, well put. And speaking of streamlining this bureaucracy and cutting red tape, we're hearing all sorts of different ideas from reforming the department to streamlining it to abolishing it altogether. I'm curious, where do you fall on this question? Do you see that one approach would work best for the other? Is it more so, well, the goal is to improve education and return that back to the state? So whichever path makes the most sense, maybe that's the path that we should take. I'm curious where you fall on that question.
Yeah, that's I kind of all three of what you just mentioned, because I do think that it absolutely needs to be streamlined. That's something that can happen immediately. But then I think we need to phase it out. I do think that there might be, as I said at the beginning, there might be a use for a U.S. Department of Education just as a resource center, as a data, center, so that we can see how we're comparing in different regions of the United States to ensure that every American child is getting a great education. I will say, even when I was campaigning, I said, constitutionally, the U.S. Department of Education doesn't have a right to exist. And that goes for a lot of those departments, right? It's really outside of the realm of what Congress was created to do. But I will say this, it's very important that we understand that what's happening at the U.S. Department of Education, as you stated, we need to make sure that when we give it back to the states, that there are some checks and balances within the state. For instance, here in North Carolina, our legislature did a great job a year and a half ago of passing the Parental Bill of Rights, Protect Women's Sports Bill, medical protection for minors. They even out of the House got the Excellence in Education bill passed that was going to do away with CRT and DEI and religious persecution within our curriculum in our classrooms. And yet it didn't pass in the Senate. But even the bills that did pass, and they did manage to override Governor Cooper's vetoes on those, many of our school districts are not following those laws. For instance, it's going to be very important, and you guys just had a great Zoom call with Jonathan Vogel this week and last week or 2 weeks ago about the executive orders and recognizing that these departments are really supposed to be serving the states. It is supposed to be empowering the states to do greater things. And so one problem that we're going to run into is it is going to take a congressional change to get the U.S. Department of Education to be abolished completely. And here is the problem. When you go around the country and they have polled Americans, only 30% of Americans are in favor of completely getting rid of the U.S. Department of Education. Mm-hmm. And here's the problem. House members have to be elected in the next year and a half, right? Yeah. They're going to be looking at running again. So they're going to be very hesitant to voting to get rid of the department until we can educate people so that they understand that this does not mean that it's going to negatively impact their child's education. It's actually going to be a move where the control, so to speak, is closer to home, and that actually gives us as citizens a lot more say in the process. But there's so many that don't know civics and they don't understand. They're just hearing what the media is saying about this being very damaging and, it's going to harm students. And so we have a lot of work to do and Callan can do a great job with that. I'm hoping that NAER is going to help with that. And I even spoke to the U.S. Department of Education people saying, you've got to control this narrative, and we need to start being the ones that are telling the American citizens how we're going to improve and make education in North Carolina great again. I mean, in the United States great again, and bring us back to when we are the leaders in public education across the entire world. We can do it, and I think we have a great opportunity to do it. And if that means streamlining, putting it back to the states, having a more transparent, accountable system, we absolutely need that. So I think they could transition out of it maybe in the next 4 years. I think just saying that you're going to pull the rug out from everybody and send it back to the states when the states aren't really equipped at this point, I think might be a little bit premature, but I'm absolutely in favor of bringing back quality education that's focused on teaching our kids how to think, not telling them what to think.
Absolutely. You make a lot of great points. There are certainly political realities to think about when it comes to a congressional vote to get rid of a department. It would surely be a remarkable effort, but perhaps we have other options at our disposal. I mean, we cannot talk about the department without mentioning DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. It has been very active lately working to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm curious, are you satisfied with DOGE's progress so far, or do you think that there's more work to be done with that entity?
Oh, I know there's a lot more work to be done, but I am thankful that they are going hard and they are really looking at all that they can do as quickly as possible, because we need to remember that every $1 trillion that they find or that they save is coming out of the pockets of U.S. citizens. And so I think we for so long have just paid our taxes and assumed that the government is doing what they should be doing with our money. And I think people are in shock. They're in disbelief. And I think that there is a pattern that even with everything that is kind of exposed, there's the first feeling of people is, I don't believe that. Like I can't be duped, right? We don't want to believe that we've been lied to or that we can't trust people. And then it becomes anger, that people are very angry that they have been lied to, or they're angry that things have been wasted or that people have been harmed. And then I feel like it goes through a period almost of apathy. When they keep uncovering so much, it does end up feeling absolutely overwhelming. And I think
Yeah.
the majority of people just say, okay, I'm just going to live my life. I can't even focus on that anymore. But then when it ends up impacting you and your family directly, that's when people start getting engaged. And I think this is so far reaching that we might jump pretty quickly from the disbelief to the engagement and the recognition of this is going to dramatically improve and help my family individually. And when it comes down to it, that is the goal of everything we should be doing in government, right? Is to make the citizens' lives better.
Yeah.
Essentially, they're here to serve us. So I'm encouraged. I think that it is waking up a lot of people. And I think it is even uniting us, honestly, as much as the media wants it not to be. I think it is uniting us because nobody wants to be stolen from and nobody wants to be participating in things that we don't align with morally or, ideologically.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone on both sides of the political aisle supports transparency,
Yep.
knowing how their government is spending their money. Everyone wants their tax dollars to be spent responsibly and for purposes that we agree on. So I certainly agree on that front. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your time this past year on the campaign trail. I know you were talking with many parents, teachers, policymakers across North Carolina. I'm curious, what was that experience like for you, and what did you learn?
It was a wonderful experience and it only reiterated it just confirmed for me that I was doing the right thing because it really did not matter anyone's race, religion, or their politics. Everyone is concerned about our young people. And it's not just about their academics. We're seeing such a decline in mental health. They're not feeling like their children are safe in the classrooms. They're worried about, what their future is going to be, about getting a job and being able to compete in the global marketplace that we find ourselves in. And so it was a wonderful experience because I traveled the state and spoke to so many wonderful people. It was also very disheartening, to be honest with you, because it didn't matter if you were in a conservative area and you thought you had a great conservative school district, you were really rural, so you weren't worried about kind of the woke stuff happening out of some of the bigger districts. There's still a lot of push for this progressive agenda, even within our very conservative areas, and those that really want our children to believe that socialism is a positive move forward for our country. Those that want our kids to doubt maybe just how they were created and think that they might be in the wrong body. Those that are telling them that you really don't have to be excellent, that it's okay to just kind of lower that bar of expectation for conduct or for academics. Nobody is happy with that. And so I'm hoping that we're going to be able to continue to hear the voices of those people. That was one thing, is people were so hungry to have their story be heard, because so many of our schools and school districts have not listened to parents for the last 5 years. And I think that was one of the things that was the greatest benefit to me, is being able to be a sounding board to people and then to take what they were saying back onto the campaign trail and say, listen, if you elect me, I'm going to fight for your voice to be heard. So I'm still fighting for their voices to be heard. It's just not within the superintendent's office, but yeah, that's why we started the National Alliance.
Yeah, and speaking of that, where can people find out more about the National Alliance for Education Reform, and how can they get involved?
Yeah, I would love for them. They can go to our website. It's forbettered.org. It looks like for bettered, but it is forbettered.org. And they can reach out there and see what's going on, and they can email us. And we're going to be we've already been at legislative action days, and the goal is just to continue to educate people so that they can know what their options are for their children, and so that we can come together as a nation and prepare the next generation of leaders that we're going to need.
Yeah, well, it sounds like y'all are doing great work. Michelle, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this discussion. Everyone, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you.